Your tip will never reach me. Ashley Miller whispered those words without looking up. Jackson Reeves blinked. He was just another tired customer this morning. No one knew he owned this cafe chain. He stood there in an old gray hoodie and faded jeans. The smell of burnt coffee beans hung heavy in the air. Ashley's hand shook as she rang up his order. Coffee, black toast. That's $5.50, sir. He slid a $5 bill into the tip jar. She didn't smile. Her eyes were empty. He frowned. Why would she say that? The cafe buzzed with quiet chatter. Machines steamed milk, spoons clinked on porcelain cups. But all he heard was her voice, cold and tired. Your tip will never reach me. He felt anger and confusion twist in his chest. Something was wrong here, and he was about to find out exactly what it was. Ashley placed his coffee on the counter. Steam curled into the air. She forced a smile, lips tight. Her eyes told a different story. Dark circles bruised the skin beneath them. Sleepless nights carved lines across her young face. She turned away to serve another customer. Her hands moved quickly. Coffee, muffin, change, smile, repeat. Jackson watched her closely. Each move was automatic, like her body worked, but her mind was somewhere far away. A man dropped $2 into the tip jar. Ashley glanced at it. Her eyes flickered with hope, then dimmed again. She handed him his coffee. Have a nice day, she whispered. He left without looking back. Ashley wiped the counter, shoulders slumping for a moment. Jackson felt his chest tighten. Why is someone so young carrying that kind of sadness? He sipped his coffee. It tasted bitter. Like the truth hiding in this place. Ashley walked into the staff room. The clock on the wall read 10 a.m. Too early for anyone to feel human. She opened her locker slowly. Inside was an old notebook. The cover was torn. Coffee stains marked the corners. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote in small letters. Day 2. Tips missing again. Her pen paused for a moment. Her hand trembled. She shut the notebook quickly and placed it back on the shelf. Ashley rubbed her eyes. They burned with tiredness. She pulled her apron tighter around her waist. Another long shift waited outside that door. She closed the locker, took a deep breath, forced her shoulders straight. Outside she heard Brian's voice barking orders. Machines whirred, cups clinked, customers laughed. But here, in this silent room, she let her guard down for just a second. Why keep working where truth feels so heavy? Jackson sat alone in the corner. His black coffee cooled in front of him. He watched Ashley wipe tables. Her steps were slow. Her shoulders drooped under an invisible weight. She smiled at customers, but the smile never reached her eyes. Her apron was old and faded. The pocket was torn at the edge. Her shoes were thin with wear. The laces were frayed. Jackson stirred his coffee, eyes following her every move. How does she survive on $6.50 an hour? He thought about her rent, her food, school fees if she studied, bus fares, bills. He looked down at his coffee. The surface rippled from his shaking hand. A cafe filled with people and laughter. Yet one girl carried silent misery no one noticed. He clenched his jaw. How many Ashleys work for me? Outside, cars rushed past in the early light. Inside, Ashley kept working, unseen. Ashley sat alone at the staff room. The fluorescent light above flickered softly. She opened the small fridge. Inside were a few paper bags with names written in marker. She reached for hers. It was a plain white bag. She pulled out a simple sandwich. 2 thin slices of bread with peanut butter spread unevenly. She took a small bite, chewed slowly, swallowed without tasting. Her phone buzzed beside her, a reminder for her evening class. She closed the notification without reading the details. Ashley stared at the sandwich in her hand. The crusts were hard, the bread was slightly stale, but it was cheap and it kept her moving. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a tired breath. Jackson watched through the staff window, the girl with dark circles under her eyes, eating in silence. How long had it been since anyone asked if she was okay? Jackson stood near the POS screen. He sipped his coffee, pretending to read an email on his phone. He glanced at the tip jar. Empty. Just an hour ago he had dropped in $5. He tapped the POS screen. The digital report showed tips for the morning, total 0. His brow furrowed. That wasn't possible. He scrolled back. The last recorded tip was from the night shift, not this morning. He looked up. Ashley handed change to a customer. Her face was blank, tired, defeated. Jackson felt heat rise in his chest. His grip tightened around his coffee cup. Where did his tip go? He watched Brian walk past the counter. Brian's hand slid into his pocket casually. Jackson's eyes narrowed. His heart beat faster. Was Brian stealing from his own staff? For the first time that morning, Jackson tasted real bitterness, and it wasn't from his coffee. Brian stood behind the counter. He wore a crisp black shirt with rolled-up sleeves. His watch gleamed under the warm cafe lights. He glanced left, then right. No one seemed to notice him. His hand reached towards the tip jar. Smooth, quick. He grabbed the folded bills and slipped them into his front pocket. His fingers tapped the glass jar twice like nothing had happened. He turned away, adjusting his shirt cuff. His face was calm, relaxed, like he was just checking inventory. Ashley caught the motion. Her eyes flicked to his pocket, then down to her shoes. She said nothing. Her shoulders sank lower. Jackson watched from his seat in silence. His chest burned with anger. Brian walked towards the storeroom, whistling under his breath, each step confident, each step dripping with arrogance. How many times had he done this? Jackson clenched his jaw. The truth was uglier than he imagined. Ashley walked back to the staff room. Her shoes squeaked softly on the tiled floor. She opened her locker with a quiet click. Inside, her old notebook waited. The torn cover was smudged with fingerprints and coffee stains. She flipped to the last page. Her handwriting was small, neat, pressed deep into the paper. She picked up her pen and wrote slowly. Day 3. Brian took the morning tips. No one saw. No one cares. Her hand paused. She closed her eyes and rested her forehead against the cold metal locker. Outside, she heard Brian laughing with another barista. His voice was loud, confident, untouchable. Ashley shut the notebook, placed it back on the shelf, closed the locker gently. She took a deep breath and tied her apron tighter. Today wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. But she didn't know. Someone was finally watching. Ashley walked back out to the counter. She wiped down a table slowly, lost in thought. Jackson stood nearby, pretending to read the menu board. His eyes watched her closely. He cleared his throat. What are you writing in that notebook? Ashley froze. Her hand tightened around the rag. She didn't look up. It's nothing, she whispered. Jackson waited. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she sighed. Her voice was quiet, flat, tired. I write down who gets the tips and who doesn't. She kept wiping the table. Her eyes stayed on the crumbs she pushed aside. Jackson felt his chest tighten. The hum of coffee machines and chatter faded around him. He studied her face, pale, empty, brave in a silent way. He wanted to ask more, but she turned away before he could speak. What else was she hiding in that notebook? Brian stood by the storeroom door. His eyes locked on Ashley across the cafe. Ashley, back here, now. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked slowly towards him. Her chest felt tight. Inside the storeroom, the smell of old cardboard and cleaning supplies filled the air. Brian closed the door behind her. His face was blank, but his eyes were sharp. He leaned in close. His voice was low, cold. Keep your mouth shut if you want this job. Ashley stared at the floor. Her throat felt dry. She couldn't swallow. Brian stepped back. He adjusted his shirt cuffs, pretending to brush off dust. You think you're smart with that little notebook? Don't forget who makes the schedule here. She nodded once, her eyes burning. Brian smiled slightly. Good girl. He walked out, leaving her alone in the dim room. Ashley clenched her fists. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. Ashley walked out of the storeroom. Her steps were small, careful. She blinked quickly, trying to clear her vision, but tears still filled her eyes. She reached her locker and opened it with shaking hands. Inside, her old notebook waited. She picked it up and clutched it to her chest. Then she slid it behind her back, hiding it under her apron. Her fingers gripped the edges tight, like it was the only thing keeping her standing. She looked into the small, cracked mirror inside the locker door. Her eyes were red and swollen, her cheeks pale. She wiped under her eyes with the back of her hand. The smudged mascara left faint dark lines across her skin. Outside, she heard Brian's voice laughing with another manager. Loud, confident. Ashley closed her locker softly, took a shaky breath. She wouldn't let him take everything, not this. Jackson sat in his car outside the cafe. Steam from his coffee cup fogged up the window. He opened his laptop and connected to the store's CCTV system. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. He clicked through footage from earlier that morning. The grainy video showed Brian behind the counter. Calm, confident, Jackson leaned closer to the screen. He watched as Brian glanced left and right. His hand reached into the tip jar. Smooth, practiced. Brian slipped those folded bills into his pocket. Then he wiped his hands with a napkin and adjusted his watch, like nothing happened. Jackson clicked to watch footage from the day before, the same thing. Different shirt, same action. He clicked back another day. And another. His chest tightened with anger. His jaw clenched. How long had this been going on? He closed his laptop slowly, eyes dark with determination. Tomorrow he would come back. And he wouldn't come as a silent customer. Ashley sat on the small wooden bench in the staff room. The smell of cleaning supplies filled the silent space. She pulled her notebook from her apron. Her fingers shook as she flipped to a clean page. She wrote slowly. Defo, threatened again. Her pen pressed hard into the paper. The words looked dark and heavy. She stared at the sentence for a long time. Her eyes burned and her vision blurred. A single tear rolled down her cheek, then another. She wiped them away quickly with the back of her hand, but they kept falling. Her shoulders shook with quiet sobs. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She closed the notebook and hugged it to her chest. It was the only place where her truth was safe. Outside, she heard Brian laughing with a customer. His voice felt like a knife. Ashley wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, but her heart still felt too heavy to carry. Jackson sat near the front counter. He sipped his coffee slowly, watching people come and go. An older man in a navy jacket stepped up to order. His hair was gray at the temples, his hands rough from years of work. After paying, he dropped $3 bills into the tip jar without looking. Jackson leaned forward. "Excuse me, sir, did you tip just now?" The man turned, surprised. "Yeah, $3. I do it every morning." Jackson nodded. "Did you know if the staff gets it?" The man frowned. "Of course they do. Why wouldn't they?" Jackson forced a small smile. "Just wondering. Thank you." The man walked away, holding his coffee tight. Jackson watched Ashley wiping tables in the distance. Her eyes stayed down, her shoulders slumped. He looked back at the tip jar. Empty again. $3. Gone in seconds. He felt anger boil low in his chest. Each new truth cut deeper than the last. Ashley stood behind the counter. Her hands moved quickly, making drinks for the long line of customers. She grabbed a hot cup of black coffee and turned to place it on the tray. Her fingers shook. The cup tilted. Scalding coffee splashed onto her wrist and dripped onto the floor. The cup clattered sideways on the tray. Ashley gasped softly. She placed the cup down and grabbed a napkin, pressing it against her burning skin. Her eyes stung with tears. She blinked them back, trying to stay calm. Brian walked past. He didn't stop. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just shook his head. "Clumsy as always," he muttered under his breath. Ashley's shoulders trembled. She wiped up the spill, her hand still shaking. Jackson watched from his seat. His chest felt tight. Rage simmered under his calm face. How much more would she endure before she finally broke? Brian's voice cut through the cafe like a knife. "Clumsy!" Everyone turned to look. The room fell silent for a moment. Ashley stood frozen behind the counter. Her hand still held the wet napkin against her wrist. Coffee dripped onto the floor by her shoes. Brian stepped closer. His eyes were cold. His mouth curled into a tight, angry line. "You're lucky I don't fire you today." Ashley lowered her head. Her shoulders shook as she pressed her lips together, holding back tears. A mother with a small child moved away from the counter quietly. 2 college students whispered to each other. Brian turned away with a loud sigh. "Clean it up, now." He walked into the back room without another word. Ashley crouched down. She wiped the floor slowly. Her breath came in short, shaky bursts. Jackson clenched his fist under the table. Heat burned in his chest. This wasn't management. This was abuse. Ashley stayed crouched on the floor, her knees pressed against the cold tiles. She wiped the spilled coffee with slow, careful movements. Her hands shook. She whispered so softly that only she could hear, "I just want fairness." Her voice cracked on the last word. Tears welled up in her eyes. One slipped down her cheek and landed on the floor, mixing with the coffee stain. She blinked quickly, trying to clear her vision. Her chest felt tight. Each breath hurt a little. She folded the napkin and threw it in the trash. Then she stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. Ashley glanced at the customers waiting in line. No one met her eyes. They looked away, pretending not to see. She turned her back to them and took a deep breath. Jackson watched from his seat. His heart felt heavy. How had kindness become something she had to beg for? Jackson sat in his car. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. He held his phone in his hand. His thumb hovered over the voice recording he had made that morning. He pressed play. Ashley's voice filled the silence, soft, broken, resigned. "Your tip. It will never reach me." He closed his eyes. The words echoed in his mind, heavy with truth. Jackson leaned back against the seat. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled into a fist around the phone. He replayed the recording again, and again. Each time her words cut deeper. Each time his anger grew stronger. He opened his eyes and looked at the cafe entrance. The lights inside were warm and golden. People laughed. Cups clinked against saucers. But under that glow, something rotten was hiding. Jackson exhaled slowly. Tomorrow he wouldn't come as just a customer. Rain fell steadily from the dark evening skies. Thin streams ran down Ashley's face, mixing with silent tears she couldn't hold back. She rode her old bike down the empty street. The wheels splashed through shallow puddles. Her jeans were soaked to the knee. Her thin jacket clung to her shoulders, heavy with water. She kept her eyes on the road ahead. Her breath came out in small white clouds in the cold air. Cars passed by with bright lights, but no one saw her. No one noticed the girl pedaling alone in the rain. She turned into the narrow path leading to her dorm building. Water dripped from her hair onto her cheeks. Her hands were red and stiff on the handlebars. She stopped and looked up at the gray sky. For a moment she closed her eyes and let the rain wash over her. All she wanted was a place where kindness wasn't a weakness. Jackson sat in his office early the next morning. The sun had barely risen. Light spilled through the tall windows onto his desk. He opened the cafe's digital report on his laptop. The tip summary flashed on the screen. Total tips yesterday. Zeros and dollars. He stared at the number. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled into a hard fist against the desk. $0. After he saw customers tipping with his own eyes, his chest burned with anger. He took a slow breath and closed the laptop. He pressed the intercom button on his phone. Schedule a staff meeting for this afternoon. Everyone. No exceptions. His assistant's voice replied softly, "Yes, Mr. Reeves." Jackson leaned back in his chair. His mind was clear, his resolve unbreakable. Today was the day. They wouldn't see it coming. He picked up his coffee. The bitterness tasted like determination. The staff stood in a tight circle near the back of the cafe. The morning rush had just ended, but no one felt relief. Ashley folded her hands in front of her apron. Her eyes stayed down. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Brian leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. He looked annoyed, tapping his foot against the floor. Maggie, the older cashier, stood quietly by the pastry case. She glanced at Ashley with worry in her eyes. The room felt heavy, silent. Even the coffee machine seemed quieter than usual. Jackson walked in. He wore a crisp navy suit today. His eyes scanned the group without him smiling. No one knew why the CEO himself was here. No one spoke. He cleared his throat and looked around the room. "I called this meeting because something very important has come into my attention." His voice was calm but firm, final. Ashley felt her heart pound in her chest. She didn't know if today would end in hope or disaster. Jackson looked around at each face in the room. The silence pressed down, thick and uneasy. He reached up and pulled off his cap. His gray hair fell slightly over his forehead. His eyes stayed sharp and clear. "My name is Jackson Reeves." He paused, letting the words sink in. Brian shifted uncomfortably against the counter. Ashley looked up, her eyes wide with shock. "I'm the CEO of this company." The air seemed to leave the room. A quiet gasp slipped from Maggie's lips. Brian's mouth tightened into a thin line. Jackson folded his arms across his chest. "I've been coming here for the past few days. Watching, listening." He scanned their faces again. No one moved. No one spoke. His voice lowered, each word heavy. "And what I've seen is something I can't ignore." Ashley felt her knees go weak. Brian's face turned pale. No one could hide now. Brian's face drained to color. His mouth opened, then closed. Sweat formed at his temples. He straightened up quickly and forced a laugh. "Sir, there must be some mistake." Jackson didn't blink. He watched Brian with cold, steady eyes. Brian's voice rose, shaking slightly. "If there's an issue with tips, it's not my fault. It's her," he pointed at Ashley. His finger trembled. "She's always handling the register. Maybe she's the one taking money." Ashley's eyes widened. Her mouth fell open, but no words came out. Her hands curled into tight fists at her sides. Brian looked around at the other staff. No one spoke, no one moved. "She's been acting strange all week," he continued, his voice louder, desperate. "Writing things down, sneaking around. She probably planned this to cover herself." Jackson's expression didn't change. Brian's voice cracked. "I'm telling you, she's the problem here." Ashley stood frozen. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. Brian's words echoed in her head. "Liar. Thief." Her hands shook as she reached into her apron pocket. Slowly, she pulled out her small, worn notebook. The cover was torn, the edges bent and stained from weeks of use. She opened it to the first page. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Every day." She flipped to another page. Tears blurred her vision. "Every time." She turned to the last page. Her fingers brushed the fresh ink written just yesterday. "Every name?" Her voice cracked. A tear slipped down her cheek. She looked up at Jackson, then at Brian. Her hands clutched the notebook tight against her chest. I wrote down everything. Who tipped, when, how much, and who took it. The room fell silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to fade. Ashley stood there, shaking, notebook pressed to her heart. She wasn't hiding anymore. Silence filled the room. Ashley's words still hung heavy in the air. Maggie shifted on her feet. Her hands trembled as she wiped them on her apron. She took a small step forward. Her voice was quiet but clear. I saw it. Brian turned towards her, eyes wide with shock. What are you talking about? Maggie looked down at the floor. Tears welled up in her eyes. Her shoulders shook. I saw you take the tips, Brian, every morning. I was just too scared to speak. Her voice broke. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back sobs. I thought if I said something, I'd lose my job. I have bills, medicine to pay for. I'm sorry. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and gently touched Maggie's arm. Jackson nodded slowly. His face was stern, but his eyes softened for a moment. The truth was finally breaking through the silence. Jackson stood silent for a moment. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out his laptop. He placed it on the counter and turned the screen towards the staff. With a few quick clicks, he opened the CCTV footage. Let's watch this together, he said calmly. The video played in silence. Grainy black and white images showed Brian behind the counter. He looked left and right. Then, with a quick movement, he reached into the tip jar and slipped the bills into his pocket. Maggie gasped softly. Ashley covered her mouth with her hand. A young barista in the back shook his head in disbelief. Brian's face turned pale. His lips moved, but no words came out. Jackson paused the video and looked directly at him. You've been stealing from your own team every single day. Brian stepped back, stumbling into the pastry case behind him. Jackson's voice was quiet but final. It ends today. Brian's face twisted with rage. His eyes darted around the room, looking for someone to defend him. No one spoke, no one moved. He let out a sharp, angry shout. This is ridiculous! You can't do this to me! He ripped off his black apron and threw it onto the counter. The metal clip clattered against the wood. He stepped forward toward Jackson, his hands shaking. You think you're better than everyone? You think you can just walk in here and... Two security guards stepped inside the cafe. Their faces were calm but firm. Sir, you need to come with us. Brian's chest heaved. His eyes burned with fury. He grabbed his bag and shoved past the other employees. As he walked out, he yelled over his shoulder, You're all nothing without me! The glass door slammed shut behind him. Silence filled the cafe. Ashley pressed her hand to her chest. Her heart beat fast. For the first time, she felt safe. Later that afternoon, Ashley stood behind the counter, wiping it down slowly. Her hands still trembled, but for the first time they weren't from fear. Jackson walked over. His eyes were calm and warm. He placed a small white envelope on the counter in front of her. She looked at it, then up at him. Her eyes were wide with confusion. Open it, he said softly. Ashley picked up the envelope with careful fingers. She opened the flap and pulled out a folded note. Written in neat, strong handwriting were the words, Thank you for your courage. Behind the note was a check with her name on it. Her breath caught in her throat. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the words. She looked up at Jackson. Her lips trembled, unable to form words. He gave her a small nod. You made this place better today. Ashley pressed the note to her chest. For the first time, she felt seen. The next morning, the cafe felt different. Lighter, warmer. Ashley stood behind the counter, pouring fresh coffee into a paper cup. She glanced at the new POS screen installed above the register. Bright white letters glowed clearly for everyone to see. Tips today. No, $103.50. She blinked in surprise. Underneath the screen showed each name. Ashley, $45. Maggie, $36. Ethan, $28. Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her lips together to keep from crying in front of customers. Maggie stood next to her, reading the screen with wide eyes. Her hand covered her mouth as she whispered, I've never seen this before. Ashley turned to her and smiled softly. For the first time, it felt real, fair. Jackson watched from a nearby table, sipping his coffee. His heart felt light. This was how it should have always been. Ashley wiped a tear away quickly. For once, kindness was visible to everyone. Rain fell softly that evening. Ashley pedaled her bike down the quiet street. Drops tapped gently against her jacket and hair. But today she didn't feel cold. She lifted her face to the sky, letting the rain wash over her skin. A small smile spread across her lips, and for the first time in weeks her chest felt light. Her shoulders didn't ache from holding back tears. Each push of the pedals felt stronger. The road ahead no longer seemed so dark. She knew tomorrow would bring challenges again, but tonight she carried something powerful inside her, hope. Justice doesn't come from noise. It comes from transparency, courage, and persistence. If you've ever seen injustice at work, comment me too or share this video to spread kindness. Ashley kept riding under the quiet rain, her smile glowing against the dark streetlights. Today, fairness finally found its way back home.